With us in studio. Wednesdays, he takes time to join us out of what we know is a very busy time. And that's Dr. Joe Congeni from Akron Children's Hospital, Sports Medicine Center. And Joe came down last night pertaining to NFL rule changes in basically lowering your head and kind of using it as a battering ram is now going to be ejection. As far as NFL games, let's get into this.
Yeah, let's get into it. I mean, exactly right. I mentioned to you, I'm giddy about it. I mentioned that unfortunately in the fall, sometimes I sound like a broken record about the old rule, that just why it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. They added a few things to the rule this year. I guess there's still some language that needs cleaned up and finalized, but I'm extremely excited about it. The differences are, it's not this targeting thing of it has to be helmet to helmet. Everybody who knows that when you lower the head and use it in tackling and hitting people, there's no doubt for both the person doing the hitting and the person being hit that there's the possibility of a concussion. There's not this deal of the refs having to decide defenseless player, not defenseless player at all. If you lower your head, it's supposed to be penalized. There's also the deal about it can be reviewed. So if they happen to miss it initially, and that's happened on a few situations, and they review it, and then the other part that I really, really like is it could have an ejection that would go with it, kicked out of the game. So for so long, it
could or will
would be kicked out of the game.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it just isn't enough of a deterrent, no matter what the Monday morning fine was. That's not enough of a deterrent. And so it's brand new, just talked about yesterday, and that's why I wanted to talk about it on the show today. It's very exciting to me. There's a lot of blowback going on in social media, and two of the biggest is, oh, this is that stupid college rule that is really messed up, when they're making the decision about ejection, kicking people out and all that. Please don't bring that to the NFL. The other is, hey, will some of these teams have enough players to finish a game with all the ejections that would happen? Well, if the game is still played the way it's played, there could be a lot of flags early on. There could be a lot of people kicked out early on. But we would think that people would say then, hey, I'm not going to lower the head. And I really think it has the best chance of working of any rules change yet to really reduce the number of concussions.
Yeah, the fine thing wasn't working, to be honest. When you have a chance of losing 2, 3, whatever the number is, defensive starters, that's really going to change the methodology and change training camp. It'll be interesting, though, fast forward in about 4 or 5 months and what it'll look like in preseason, because there's going to be some adjustments having to be made.
Oh my gosh. And preseason will be the time they probably won't care as much about a lot of flags and throwing them. But when they get into the season a little bit more, and there's already a lot of complaints about the fans and some dropping off in the NFL. Oh my gosh, changing the game, slowing it down, so many penalties. But we'll see if it really goes along with people being kicked out. Very quickly, these guys may not lower the head. The other thing is maybe teaching proper tackling form, which is using the head on the side of the body and tackling with the shoulder, not using the head as the battering ram, as you called it. Not trying to make the decision who's a defenseless player or not having to make it in real time, having the ability of looking at a replay. I know that slows the game down too. But overall, I'm really happy and I'm very anxious in the next few months because, as we talk about all the time, it affects college and that'll affect high school and that affects everybody. But we need to make a difference, and this is one rules change I can get behind that I think could make a difference.
And I think the big thing, too, is they have to enforce it on the offensive side of the football as well. So often we think of lowering the head for defensive players making the tackle, but I saw a number of situations last year where the running back's coming out of their full head of steam, and he's lowering his head and pile driving into those defensive players. That's got to be enforced on that side of the football as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. So running backs, offensive linemen, downfield blocking. There's a lot of, you'll see downfield blocking where people, it's just been so ingrained in the game, and I've talked about it. It's been because I've been around the game, working on the high school sidelines for 30 years. The last 10, 15, 20 years, everybody has seen it. Everybody imitates it. And on both sides of the football, it's too much. It makes the burden just impossible to reduce the number of concussions in any other way. And there might be some growing pains with all the flags, but please stick with it. I think it's worth it to try to save this game. This is one that's got me pretty excited this morning.
And I think that's a great point you just made, because I was going to bring it up as well. Instead of looking at this as a deterrent to the game of football, you might want to look at this rule as kind of a saving rule for this game. And I'm not saying that the game of football was going to end in 2-3 years, but when you look at the big picture of this game, if this continued down the road it was, I don't know in 20, 25 years if the game of football was going to be around. Something like this needed to be done.
Well, you'll know I'll keep you updated on the youth numbers, and the youth numbers have not been good. No matter how much USA Football and others are trying to protect those numbers, there's no doubt that the numbers of kids playing youth football has gone down in every league that's out there for young kids. And we'll keep an eye on that number to see if it levels out, goes back up, or continues to decrease. Because if it continues to decrease, Ray, then what you just said is absolutely true. We will not or cannot sustain this game forever if we don't have people coming up from the younger levels.
And the other variable to this story in the big picture is then now, even more important now, is we've got to get the solid coaching for these kids between 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, before they even get to the junior high, middle high, and high school times. And I know a lot of that is being done by volunteer dads. I've been there, you've been there, who volunteer their time and coach and everything and do the best job they possibly can. But I think it's now even more important when these kids are so impressionable and learning the game, Joe, that they have to be taught the proper way. And that means something needs to be done as far as getting some adult coaching, experienced coaching, whether it be former collegiate players, former pro players, down into these kid range to teach the proper way of now blocking and tackling.
Thank you so much. I did coach myself, and I saw some men that really want to teach the game well, but it's really hard for them to say this is the proper way to do it. And then people watch on Saturday and Sunday, and it's played a different way. This is the proper way to block and tackle. And then you see these kids are smart. They see that's not the way it's played on Saturday and Sunday. If we really get this turned around, this has a chance of helping us significantly, Ray. So, you and I will follow it very closely in the next several months. Like you said, 3 or 4 months. I don't want to skip over what's coming next. Tomorrow, baseball. The kids are starting to play. The box scores are in the paper. It's really, really exciting with baseball and spring sports and track and lacrosse getting going. But we'll keep an eye on this football rule for sure.
Okay, Kevin Love left last night with a concussion for the Cavaliers. Do they have, quote, concussion protocol in the NBA? Do they have to go through the same series?
Yeah, Ray. The NBA does it in a little bit of a unique way from the NBA, and I know the guys that are the NBA concussion czars. They centralize it through one office, so that office has a team of people, and they look at, they talk to all the people that were at the site where the person played. The central office looks at all the film, looks at the results of the testing last night, looks at the results of the testing today, and so it's very strictly controlled in the NBA, and there's no doubt that the concussion protocol there is as rigid and stringent as much more so even than the NFL, where they try the thing about having people that are not on the sidelines and with the team. They've tried that, but the NBA has it very centralized, and there's no doubt that they'll go through that rigid protocol.
It's very interesting, speaking of concussions in Major League Baseball. We're now starting to see more and more of that. The young outfielder where the Yankees used to be with the Indians, Clint Frazier, missed basically all of spring training, ran into a wall, and he still has some concussion syndromes. We've seen Justin Morneau, the former Minnesota Twin first baseman, basically that kind of derailed his whole career.
Yeah.
Seeing more of the concussion name and product being brought up in baseball as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And Ray, while I'm here, because you let me use the microphone to say this, and because you and I have friends at the OHSAA like Tim Street and others, I've got to say that people are telling me every day as a lightning rod, let's make changes with some of the things in lacrosse, particularly girls lacrosse. So I had a game a couple nights ago. I get calls from the trainers that are on the field, and we're trying to do some research. research, the numbers are pretty high. As we want to make, we want to not make this just a football thing. Let's look across the board. And spring is a time where really our number one sport that rises to the top is lacrosse. And it's not just the guys. Even though the rules are different in the girls' side, we need to be stricter and take another look at that, I think, in the off season, to do everything we can to prevent concussions before we start getting into the protocols and everything like you just said.
I was at Rocco's JV baseball game Monday night. Young man got hit on the side of the helmet down by the jaw area where the lip comes off the ear.
Yeah.
Got hit there, went down, got up, and there was no real scratches. Luckily, he had the helmet on.
Yeah.
But they looked at his eyes, and they said, we're just going to be safe, and you're going to come out of the game. Now, I'd venture to say that about 5-10 years ago, he would have probably stayed in. But the coaches didn't mess around, to credit them.
Yes.
They just said, go over there and sit down. They looked at him a little bit, and just to be on the safe side, he sat down the rest of the game. So I think even in that side, you're seeing a change. That I think 5 years ago, that player would have probably stayed in the game, not in today's game.
Right. I think we're making some inroads, no doubt about it. And the key person in the high school setting, without question, the athletic trainers are really good and helpful when they're around. Unfortunately, in some settings, athletic trainers aren't around. Some high schools don't have them. They don't have enough time with them, or they're covering so many different sports. But still, there's no question the mindset is totally different than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Even in the last 3 to 5 years, the education piece, I think, is taking hold. So there's some positive things today, and I'd say one of the things that we wanted to start with right off the bat this morning was to say these rules changes could really help us significantly.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for coming in.
Okay, Ray. Have a great week.
You too. Dr. Joe Congeni, Sports Medicine Center at Akron Children's Hospital.